Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent. And today we're going to be playing more of the Trial of the Grasses seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which whenever we play a unit, it will get damaged by 2 and then boosted by 4, unless it's a Witcher, in which case it will only get boosted by 4. Now after almost a year and a half of playing The Witcher 3, I am coming very close to finishing the entire game, including the Blood and Wine expansion. So today I thought we'd celebrate a bit by playing a Blood and Wine themed deck. And just about any deck can work in this event, but this deck is focusing specifically on that theme and less so on maximizing the potential in this event. So for that reason, just to be clear, this is definitely not a competitive deck. I do not recommend that you use it yourself unless you are also looking to get in on the Blood and Wine action. So, with all that being said, let's go check it out. So like I said, today we're going to be playing a Blood and Wine themed deck. And again, I only recommend that you play this deck if you are looking to mess around with a meme deck, because if you use this deck, you're probably going to lose most, if not all of your matches, so if you're trying to be competitive, you're going to be disappointed. And before I go any further, let me just say that of course we'll be talking more about the Blood and Wine Witcher 3 expansion, so if you have not yet played Blood and Wine, then this is your warning that there might be some small spoilers here and there. Now with all that being said, today we're going to focus on the Nilfgaard side of Blood and Wine. So we'll be using a double cross deck, and besides that, well, you see, there's not really a consistent archetype across the board, which is going to be the primary reason why it's going to be really hard to win with this deck. Because every card in this deck is either something that directly shows up in Blood and Wine, or something generic enough to the Witcher world and everything happening in Blood and Wine that it seemed fairly reasonable to include it. So with those restrictions in mind, I used the best cards I could, but the options weren't great. But all that leaves us with is a few Assimilate cards, and then of course our leader ability allows us to play a card for our opponent's deck which will trigger Assimilate, and with Damien, we can play that leader ability a second time, so Damien is another way that we can play into the Assimilate archetype a little bit more, along with a few cards that we'll talk about later. But other than that, we are basically just relying on a few really big, powerful cards to carry the entire deck, so we're hoping that they're enough to get the job done. Our best combo is probably to use Syanna to double down on the order ability of Viviene Oriole when we play her next to Sunset Wanderers, which is the highest provision cost unit in our deck. Now that's not the easiest thing to do because Sunset Wanderers will start in our hand and then gradually move itself further to the right until it eventually gets the rightmost spot in our hand and plays itself, so it definitely takes some good planning to time that combo perfectly. And we're going to be relying very heavily on Yrden and Geralt of Rivia to either destroy or reset our opponent's biggest units. And everything else is all over the place, but we're going to try to make it work. So now flip through the deck to show you what else we have here, but of course, we have a lot of cards that are somewhat questionable in terms of how useful they are, but they're included because they're a key part of the Blood and Wine expansion, and or of all the cards that fit our criteria, those were the best ones. And of course, as always, if you're as crazy as me and you want to try to challenge yourself to win with this deck, then I've added the deck link and list in the description. And at least with Duchess's Informant, we can use this to create a copy of some of our opponent's best bronze units, because their bronzes are probably better than our bronzes, and this will also trigger Assimilate as well. Then Imperial Diplomacy can also trigger Assimilate, so again, I guess that just makes this a bad Assimilate deck. Then Megascope will either use to create a copy of some of the bronze units that we create using the Duchess's Informant, or to create a Nilfgaardian Knight just because it has a lot of base power. So there's a look at the deck, including only cards that show up in the Blood and Wine expansion, which turns out is going to make this a pretty big challenge. So I think if we can beat anyone who's playing a Witcher's deck, then that is a success. But we'll never know till we try it, so let's go see it in action. Alright, so going against Northern Realms here, and they'll go first. Alright, let's get rid of the Nilfgaardian Knight, and then probably the Megascope as well. It'll go with the Griffin Witcher, decent source of damage, and a card we might want to create copies of. Let's start with our Assimilate, though. Then they'll go with the Mortal Cavalry, which is a decent point slam. And now let's make a copy of that Griffin Witcher. And we do have a way to give it Veil, which will make it much more powerful if we can make that happen. Oh, but they're going Artifact Compression. No! Just a turn too quick for us. Then again, we could go Duchess's Informant. We go for attempt number 2 here. Okay, then Griffin Witcher Mentor, in this case. Alright, so now let's go with Roderick. And use him to get Marlene. And we can use her to give Veil to that Griffin Witcher. And they're going with Erland. Now that's, of course, one of, if not their biggest card. But they play him early enough that he does not gain immunity, so we might be able to deal with him. So let's give the Veil. And dish out our damage. Now let's go with Imperial Diplomacy here to trigger our Assimilate one more time. And I guess we go with Centurion Envoy. Not a huge fan of our options there. Then they're going with Vesemir Mentor. And they have a decent amount of Witchers out there. So that's a reasonable play. And now let's use the Centurion Envoy ability to move Land of 1,000 Fables to the top. Then we can start setting up our combo with Syanna. And they're going with the Amphibious Assault. That's going to be another big point slam. And Keldar is possibly their other biggest card, because that will spawn a bunch of Witcher students, which are worth a lot of points in this event. So let's use our leader ability here. And I think we go with Berengar. Then let's go with the Toussaint Errant-Knight. Hit one of these guys. And we're just not going to have time to use that Griffin Witcher ability, unfortunately. But he's now also going to deal 3 damage every turn. There goes the Sunset Wanderers. And they'll go with Berengar. Now we'll dish out our damage. Use the Centurion Envoy one more time. And let's put Damien at the top of our deck. Now we'll activate Syanna. And use Royal Decree. Get Viviene Oriole out here. And play her next to the Sunset Wanderers. For a huge point slam here. So that's definitely our biggest card we're going to have. They're going with Vesemir, which will of course give them the other Wolf School Witchers as well. That is enough for them to pass us. Syanna goes down, but she had just enough time to do her job. Now I think we use Anna Henrietta to steal our opponent's leader ability. And let's use it here. Because of course, once we dish out all those boosts, we'll get a Lyrian Scytheman, which is just enough for us to retake the lead. Then they go with Leo. Now that's a big point slam as well. And that's going to be hard for us to catch up to them with that, especially if they use their leader ability here, which it looks like they are going to do. So after their Lyrian Scytheman, they are 30 points ahead of us here, if not more. In which case, I think we just pass, because I don't think we can catch them at this stage. Alright, let's get rid of the Imperial Diplomacy and Nilfgaardian Knight. And they're going to dry pass here. In which case, I suppose we go with Land of 1,000 Fables. Get us Imperial Diplomacy. Get us the Furway card. And in this case, it really doesn't matter what we go with. I guess Temerian Infantry. And that will give us the round 2 win. Alright, now let's get rid of the Megascope. And let's get rid of Tourney Joust. Alright, and then we'll get another. Now let's go with the Nilfgaardian Knight, because of course they don't have any units out there for us to boost, so it's just a 10-point play, without the usual downside. Then they'll go with Selective Mutation. Now let's use the Land of 1,000 Fables to transform our Tourney Joust. And we get a Nausicaa Sergeant, and that gets boosted from deploy abilities, and we have a lot of deploy abilities, so that actually works really well for us. And they'll get another Griffin Witcher out here. And that certainly has the potential for some long-term damage, so I'm thinking we might even want to use Geralt of Rivia on it. And another Immortal Cavalry. Now let's use Damien to make sure we have plenty of time to get our leader ability back. Then they'll go with another Amphibious Assault. And in this case, it's to get a Griffin Witcher Ranger. And we have enough units out there that that's a decent play as well. Now let's use Damien. And use the Toussaint Errant-Knight. Dish out some damage. Then they'll use Geralt Gwen to get another one of those Griffin Witcher Rangers. This time they'll put in the range row, so that's looking like the row we're going to want to reset with Yrden. So let's do that here. Then we have the second round of our leader ability that we got from Damien. And let's play the Lyrian Scytheman out here. And that gives us a pretty sizable lead. Of course, we'll see what their last card is, and it's Igni. So we'll lose that Scytheman in all likelihood. But even with that, we still have the lead, and somehow, some way, we emerge victorious. I just don't believe it. Alright, so going against Skellige here, and uh-oh. This is probably the best deck in this event, so our chances of success are just about 0. Let's get rid of Battle Preparation, and the Toussaint Errant-Knight, and we'll just give this our best shot, even if the odds are stacked heavily against us. And let's start with that Knight, since there's no one for us to boost out here, so there's no downside. Then they'll go with the Bear Witcher Adept. Now let's get our Assimilate out there. And they'll go with the Small Blood Priest, so that's a good combo. Okay, and let's go with more Assimilate. And they're going with the Quartermaster. So that's probably the card we'll want to try to create copies of. Let's go with Imperial Diplomacy here to trigger our Assimilates. And don't love the options here, but I guess we go with the Corsair. And deal out the bleed. Then let's use our tactic on him so that he can continue to use that order ability without getting locked. So that being said, he will now get destroyed. So much for that. Alright, now let's use the Megascope to create a copy of that Nilfgaardian Knight. Now let's use our leader ability, and they have some pretty big cards in their hand. I guess we go with Eskel, because it is early enough in the round that I think that's preferable. And they'll pass early. But they may have forgotten that we had that Megascope, which will spawn in a unit here, and that is enough for us to take the round 1 win. Alright, let's get rid of our Megascope. And probably Battle Preparation as well. And I think we just use Imperial Diplomacy here to get a throwaway card. And sure, we'll make it the Bear Witcher Adept. Then they'll go with Selective Mutation. And yeah, we are a card down here, so I think we do pass at this point. And they'll pass as well, taking the round 2 win. Now let's get rid of Tourney Joust. And Henrietta is great. Now let's get rid of the other Tourney Joust. They'll go with Eskel. Of course, we saw that one coming. Now let's go with the Toussaint Errant-Knight to damage him. Then they'll use armor up. Now let's use Anna Henrietta here to seal their leader ability. Then they'll go with the Bear Witcher Quartermaster. And this is, again, probably the card we'd like to create copies of. So let's do that here with the Duchess's Informant. And use him to get at some Witcher students. Now they go with Gerd. And if they're playing him in the melee road, then that will get rid of the Toussaint Errant-Knight, as well as deal a fair bit of damage to the other units. Alright, we are about to get Sunset Wanderers out here, so let's set up the combo with Syanna. And it's kind of hilarious having Anna and Syanna next to each other like that. And this is the turn we get Sunset Wanderers. And they'll use Artifact Compression on Sunset Wanderers. No! Okay, well, that's actually better than it getting destroyed, because at least we can still use our combo here. Let's activate Syanna, then play Viviene Oriole. Give her a huge boost. And that's exactly enough for us to catch up with them. But then Igni... Oh, no! Oh, that hard work! You're just gonna cancel it out here. That'll get rid of Viviene Oriole. Alright, now let's use Megascope. Create another copy of the Bear Witcher Quartermaster. And they'll go with the Triangle within a Triangle, which will boost their Igni. Now let's go with another Duchess's Informant. Create another Bear Witcher Quartermaster. And then we get the other one from our Megascope. Now they're going Geralt of Quinn. What are they going to get with him? It's the Wolf School Witchers. Now let's use our Quartermasters. And use Land of 1,000 Fables. And in this case, I suppose Battle Preparation. And it actually auto-targeted Syanna there, but that is probably best, because that means we have a target for our Quartermaster, now that someone has armor. But that Yrden certainly hurts. It's a little bit early, of course. But now we can hit Syanna, and not actually deal any damage to ourselves. Now let's use our Yrden, and reset that range row. Looks like that's the biggest. So now it all comes down to our last cards. For them, it's Leo, and he'll get a huge boost from all those Witchers. But of course, we can destroy him with our Geralt of Rivia. Then they, of course, have their leader ability, but so do we. So those functionally cancel each other out. Alright, time to see what we're made of. So let's use Geralt to get rid of Leo. And that makes this fairly close. With our leader ability as well, will it be enough? And the answer is not quite, although to be honest, losing by just 5 points to the best deck in this event is crazy because this should not have been close. So there's a look at a deck to celebrate approaching the end of the Blood and Wine expansion for the new Trial of the Grasses seasonal events. And you know what? It wasn't quite as horrendous as I thought it would be. So if you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.